Welcome, I'm Ben from WA Fishing for 4x4. This is part 2, following up on part 1 of the self-installation of the OzRoo tub rack from PPD Performance. If you're interested in getting one and installing it yourself, they aren't too difficult to do if you've got a little bit of skill set and the required equipment. And hopefully, because I've put through some information not in the first video, this one containing some extra stuff that'll make your job easier if you do it all in one crack rather than like me having to come back and fix a few things now. As well as I've sent back them through some instructional sets, so hopefully that will be available for new purchasers, so that if you are installing them, the instructional set will be a lot more informative and you know exactly what you're going to need equipment wise, also what you get inside the packet, and some better up-to-date images of how it should come together and where things should be placed and all that sort of stuff. I want to bring your attention because we've got there's a couple of things I want to make mention for this part 2 portion. Is one, I went through and I itemised out exactly what you get inside. So you get 88 of these regular size bolts, and this is the ones you're using to attach pretty much everything except for the structural points. And your structural points, they come in as these two size bolts. Save your smaller bolts of the structural bolts for the hard to reach corners like this one. You can see how I placed the bolt facing up. In the video I'll include some pictures where I show you how, and you see it in the instructions as well, but in the video I'll show you how much space you have in mine anyway to work with. Yours may be different, but most tubs, when you get towards the edge, you're running out of room and the metal or the tub liner might come out and cut off some of your access. So for me, I couldn't get any type of either the socket wrench up there, and I couldn't get a normal spanner up there, but I could just get the Allen key in there to hold it steady while I tightened it up from the top. So I used the shorter version so that it didn't poke out as far. The longer version, obviously you can see the size difference. You're pretty much looking at it sticking up about this high. So you don't want it really sticking up that much. This isn't too bad and it doesn't look that unappealing. And then the other side is standard, the bolt facing downwards. The other thing I want to bring up is the foam. Now if you're getting this from PPD, just ask, or they should be able to give you this anyway, but if not, just double check. Ask for some foam. It is peel stickable, and it's in the video I'll show you as well with this. And I've basically placed it, you can sort of see it sort of sticking out at the end here. In the video, when I finish off this, I'll just take you around the outside of it to show you the complete thing done. And I'll just focus in where you can see the foam just underneath the mounting bracket there. Just mostly so that once you've tightened all the bolts up and you Loctite them with Loctite with the glue, just so they don't come undone. And also any movement, if you're doing a lot of forward drive and corrugations work, things still shake, and if you're worried about any sort of damage to your paintwork or any scratching and that sort of stuff, having that foam that sits just in between there, it still provides you strength and stability with all the bolts holding the tub rack down, but it then protects your tub as well. So just getting a hold of this, I mean look, I got heaps left and I've done all 4, so it's not that bad. Just a bit of foam stuck between that will save you any sort of heartache if you want to take it off later and you're worried about damage to your tub itself. So there's that. Last thing, so with the washers, when I mentioned about the number of washers and double washering, or when you want to, what I mean by double washering is, like you can see here, on a majority of mine I actually got extra washers anyway, but you only have 88, so you've got to pick and choose which one you want to put how many washers in what locations, because you get 88 bolts in total, and I think I mentioned, roughly 56 or something you need, or almost, depending on how excessive you go with the bolts. So pick and choose where you want to use double washers. Like this hole, for example, right here is very small, so putting the bolt through it with the normal head, it actually grabs properly, whereas this hole on the outside is much larger, so it would require the washer here to actually get a better grip to hold down that whole section. As well as I actually put in extra ones like this. This doesn't need to be here really, it's just an extra one I put in because I had the extra bolt, so I put it there. So, and the same with up the top. Along the sides, your main back bar, you're putting in 2 washers here, and 2 bolts here, and then on the opposite you're also doing 2 bolts. So you can pick and choose with these whether you want to say put one of these as a 2 washer on both sides. Same with down the bottom here, you might choose to say 1 washer on both sides and then no washer on it, or you want all of the backs all double washed. It's you know, it's a choice better, but I say on the structural points always put double washers where you can. Elsewhere just a single washer is enough to hold things together, and your structural points particularly around your railings. So these points, you 2 on the sides, and obviously on the top, the one down and the 2 facing in. If you can use washers on those, if you can see up the back on my ones there where the other railings are, you can see how they've got washers facing those areas, and it's mostly because you've got a wider area, so you want to cover as much space as possible for those washers. So that's just about the washering with the washers. Just a little bit of tips in relation to that. So it's up to you where and how many you place in what spots, and if you decide you want to double wash it every single one past the number that you have, just go out and buy some extra washers. It's not like they're that expensive to get a bunch of these little ones. I have the sizes listed in the instructions and stuff, so you can always go out and buy a heap of these if you want to make sure you've got enough to wash through everything. As I say, I use grease on all of mine. They said WD-40, doesn't really matter, but you can see the red grease that I put around mine makes it just easier putting them on, and even though they're a little bit difficult, but also makes it taking them off when I took it off to redo everything, it made it a little bit easier taking it all off as well. So I think that's most of it. I have reattached my soft cover awning back over my tub rack as a temporary solution. So once I finish talking, I'll grab my soft cover and I'll basically fit it back over so you can see what it looks like with it back over, with what I would say a temporary solution is, because all I've done is just cut out an area for it so it goes around here. But we'll look at getting an option and pricing, so I can give you an idea of what it would cost you if you wanted to keep your soft tourniquet cover and have it professionally made to fit around these gaps as well. But final messages, and I'll bring this up in the video as well, just covering these corner areas where the gaps are can be problematic if a lot of utes, I don't know about a lot of utes, but I know the utes that I've been looking at, they have, and the top line, there's a gap, and sometimes it's very easy to drop your bolts down there. So I recommend jamming in some cardboard across the gap, so that if you do drop your bolt or your nut, it just drops onto the cardboard and it rolls down into your tray rather than down into underneath the tray liner where I've had to go and fetch a few of mine. So there's some helpful tips to avoid complications and losing bolts, helping to fix any issues when you put your structural mounts down. With your corner ones, if you can't reach to go down directly down this way because of the fact that you don't have room, then just come up and use the shorter bolts for the corners, and you only get 4 of the shorter bolts. So if you got 4 of the shorter bolts, that's why you have to be really careful not to lose them, because you only have 4. If you lose one of those, then you've got to use the long bolt, and you don't really want to have to use your long bolt for this because it just pokes out way too high. So I think that's pretty much covering most of the little tips for this little intro. The rest I'll just piece together some of the footage. I'll take you around the finished product once showing it's all been done. I'll put the tourniquet cover bouquet back on so you can see what it looks like with the soft cover back on, and a little short video of some of the little bits that I have now changed and added in as a result of what I've learnt, and I'll put a little voiceover in with some suggestions so that it makes it easier for you when it comes time for you to install your own tub rack. So I hope that's of some help to you when it comes to installing your own, because it's a great system. I even got a little picture to show you what it looks like in the rearview mirror looking behind, as to how much room it takes up in your rearview mirror as well when you're looking behind, if you still get enough to see so you can see behind you. So some stuff you might not have thought of. So we'll go through that in a bit more detail momentarily. So I'll cut away for now, grab this soft colour, put that on, and we'll go through the last little bits of putting it together. But yeah, cheers.
This is just following on from what I just said, just putting the foam on. So just take off the back of it, it sticks down, and then you basically stick it onto the tray of a ute between the ute and the mounting bracket. So pretty straightforward. Once it's stuck there, it won't come off. And then you can put your mounting bracket back down in place and poke the holes if you haven't already. So this is the front one. Now I'm putting some the foam underneath. Yeah, it's probably, this is why I say it's better to do a lot of this stuff at the start, so you're not having to do what I'm doing, which is kind of lift it up a little bit, undo it all, and then put it on. So it's better just to do it all at the start. So this is why I'm making this second one, so that you've got all these bits of information ahead of time, as well as I put this all in the instruction, all changes, which if you need, just drop us a comment and I can get it to you. Sorry, I'm just using the scissors here. That's how I'm just basically I'm cutting out the holes where the bolts go in that I'd pre-drilled previously. Once the bracket's on, the rest of it doesn't move, so it's pretty straightforward from there. I think I'd just come around here and just, because I couldn't quite get everything, cut out all the remaining bits and pieces from that area, and then I had to clear it out to make sure the bolt actually fitted through the hole that I'd pre-drilled. So yeah, it's just making sure it still fit, and all the stuff was out of the way. So yeah, foam's a great idea. So a couple of pictures. So that's what it is if you didn't see it in the intro, and that's what it looks like when you're sticking it on the surface. And then that's me cutting out the hole, so when you put your bolt through. Now this is just a sped up video of me tightening all the structural bolts, just to show you. Now there'll be an angle underneath where you get to see how I'm actually holding that bolt into place, but yeah, it's really tiny, that area to get to, and that's why I mentioned that it's important for when you're putting yours together to make sure you're covering that area so that you don't drop bolts. Sorry, I lost my voice from earlier today. So it's easy to do with a socket wrench than a normal wrench, this sort of stuff, but you know, if you don't have the right size, then a wrench or a shifter or something like that will do. But yeah, getting the Allen key and wedging it underneath there is the best way of getting it to go up, and using the shirt bolt. So that's the long bolt, that's me. So I'm using the same socket wrench, so it fits in that gap, and I pushed it right up, and then I basically tighten up those long bolts. These are the ones that are really annoying to do because they are really long, so it takes you a long time to do them up. So this is why I'm saying you make sure you do all this sort of stuff right at the beginning, so that you're not having to undo all of these things that spent you ages trying to get them done up, just to be able to put some of this stuff back in later. That silver bit you can see that's to the side, that's the actual, I re-clipped that back on, and I did it by pop riveting it. You can see it there, that silver stuff, that's the bit that my soft cover attaches to. So when I put the top back on, I had to drill out the pop rivets and then take those off. But when I want the soft cover back on, I basically re-drilled the holes, pop riveted it back on, and it stuck back down. That's how I got the soft cover back on. But obviously it all depends on what sort of ute you got and what options you want to go with, whether you even need to bother with any of that. But that's how I did it, and in the end you'll see me putting it back on. But anyway, that's tightening it up. The front ones, you can tell this is sped up quite a lot, and it still takes you ages to do all of this, because look how much you're barely turning it. And that's why I recommended wherever possible you can use your drill, just to save a bit of time and effort. But spots like this you just can't get your drill into, so you've got to revert to those Allen keys. And that's why I think I mentioned in that first video making sure you've got all those bits and pieces, because the bigger Allen keys are normally not easy, like don't usually come in a set. You probably got to get a large one. Offhand, I was just lucky enough to have the right one in my toolkit. So anyway, this is the view from underneath, just to give you an idea of how much space you've got to work with. You can see there, right in the corner, where I get the Allen key in, that's where I'm trying to actually get access to that bolt to hold it in place while I tighten it up. And you can sort of see the space that you're left with is so small that you are very restricted in those sort of areas. Even doing the bolts out a little bit further, there's only just enough room to get your socket wrench under there. So it took me a few goes to actually get the Allen key in the spot I needed to get it in. I eventually got it in the spot, and all I do is I jammed it in between my hand and the wall and just basically tightened the top portion up until it was properly tightened. So that's the way I did that one. Same with this one was done, the other bolt is done with a socket wrench. So all I did is use the Allen key on the top and just held the bolt in place with the socket wrench. So this is why I say socket wrench is much easier, because you can just stand there and hold it. But yeah, this vision's great just to see what I'm talking about how much angle you have. And you can see this is now the back right. I actually had to pull out the tub liner slightly in this corner because of the lack of room. I couldn't get the Allen key in there, so I had to pull my tub liner off slightly to actually get my Allen key underneath to tighten that bolt up. Fortunately it just it sticks back down, it's all good, but it's just something to keep in mind when it comes to installing yours, when you're placing it on and drilling your holes, making sure that you've got that space that you need in that area. And here's, this video is a perfect example of being able to see the space that I'm talking about. So now I'm tightening up the other bolt, and the same thing applies. I just hold that bolt in place while I use the Allen key on the top, and you could do it up until it's tight as possible. So that's pretty much that. And then as I mentioned in the intro, once everything's all done and you're happy with it, they recommend you put Loctite on the bolts and those nuts, just to prevent them from coming loose at any stage whatsoever. I haven't put the horizontal bolt in there at the moment, but that'll be later. So this is up the front. This is see how I'm grabbing that cardboard? It's a bit hard to see because it is sped up, but that cardboard was what I was talking about in the intro. So I jammed that cardboard up in that corner, so that because that corner is even harder to get to, so that if I dropped anything, it wouldn't go down the gap that sits in that area in there. So that's why I brought it up. It'd be so that if you have a similar situation, to not do what I did and lose nuts or bolts as a result of accidentally dropping them and then realising they go down somewhere where you don't have access to. So sticking a bit of cardboard or whatever you might think of, towel, paper, I don't know, whatever you want. But yeah, as you see, having that in there just means that I don't lose one, and it's really important not to lose some of the bolts, because especially the structural bolts, you don't have lots of those to spare, unlike the small ones. So it's always good to do it so that you're not having to worry about that sort of shit. So this is just a tour of the completed tub rack altogether. So as you can see, it's all put together properly. As I mentioned, I double washed it. I put washers on both sides for pretty much the entire rig. I had extra washers, so it made that capable. But as I mentioned, you don't have to. It's not a necessity, but it's just, I mean, one, I did it for cosmetics, so all the back matches and looks the same, and every other bolt looks the same. And there's no other purpose to that than cosmetics. But for certain parts, particularly like these railing areas and the side areas there, having double washers on that is really important. And on the top there, you can see how the two railings have bolts going down vertically, gaps you have in those. If there's any of the longer styled ones or a larger round hole, using the bigger washers is a better way to go. So this is me just attaching on my old soft cover, just to show you that it can be done. Mind you, as I mentioned in my intro, this is it's not waterproofed, as it still contains the hole where the old bars that my Triton came with was placed. So there is a hole. You might see it when I go around with the video. You can probably tell there's a hole. So it's not completely water sealed tight, but it's better than nothing. And I do like the soft cover, especially with the bend through the middle. It gives you a bit more space to move around and stuff. So, but yeah, that's it. So we'll take a quick tour around the outside. See, yeah, now you can see the that hole I was talking about. That hole's from the previous bar work. So that's the complete setup. I've got to say, I like it. I think it's a fantastic thing. I reckon it looks mean on the ute. And the fact that I put my rooftop tent on top of it, it's even better. I can use it to carry stuff. When I went away, I used it to attach on my recovery gear or to the side of those side railing areas. But yeah, this is just to give you the view of a completed tub rack with all the bolts and nuts put in the right position, including extra ones that don't really need to be there, but I've done it anyway because I just like to make sure it's held together strong and it's not going to buckle under the amount of forward driving work that I'll put my vehicle through. So you might not need that many, but as I mentioned, you can buy those washers. They're cheap as, and I'll link in the description the size. And as I mentioned, if you're doing this and you need some updated instructions, just comment and let me know, and I'm happy to send you the new ones that I've come up with that'll guide you through it a bit better. So here's some important notes of points. So this is what I'm talking about, that angle and access to those areas are really restricted, and the metal that pops out, you can see there clearly that metal, and then there's a gap in there. That's the issue that I'm trying to make you aware of as best as I can, because you don't want to drop crap down there. I think there's a picture coming up. So that's the Allen key. I've barely reached it in it. Yeah, so here's a picture of me. I've jammed cardboard across that gap, and you can just see the nut there in the corner. It's just there so you can see, not lose it. So that's a picture. Sorry, I'm actually stationary for that, but that's just a picture of what it looks like in the rear view mirror, so you've got your vision. Here's just some pictures of the tub rack all finished. The whole lot's all done, and how good it looks and stuff like that. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful. I really hope that the information from both of these videos will help it, so that when you put yours together, you nil issues. And make sure you go check out PPD and have a look at some of their stuff. Otherwise, hope this was helpful. Subscribe, like, whatever, and click all the buttons. It'd be fantastic. More videos coming your way, both of reviews of some gear, testing some four driving stuff, and future events. So stay tuned, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate that one.